99% of people think they know the Napoleonic Wars. They've been sold a grand illusion, a lie buried with 40,000 men in a frozen ditch in Lithuania, a truth governments have suppressed for 2 centuries. But you are there. The cheering has long since faded. The air, once sharp with gunpowder and glory, now hangs heavy with the metallic tang of blood and the sweet, sick rot of gas gangrene rising from your comrades. Your world has shrunk to this circle of dying firelight, a weak defense against the suffocating Russian dark. Yet Larry, the most famous surgeon in Napoleon's army, scoops a handful of the squirming larvae and gently places them on your raw, open flesh. You feel their tiny bodies moving, 1,000 minute vibrations against your nerves. It is the most repulsive sensation you have ever known. And yet, it doesn't hurt. They are cleaning you. They are eating only the dead and dying tissue, the very flesh that would fester into gangrene and kill you in a week. This knowledge was actively suppressed, a truth so profound and simple that the academies refused to see it. Beneath the layers of wool and leather, your fingers find the hard, flat circle sewn into the lining of your tunic. It's not a holy relic. It's a French coin, stolen from a dead man's purse. An old sergeant, his face a roadmap of forgotten battles, told you it could stop a British musket ball. A lie, you know, but it's a lie that feels warmer than any prayer the army chaplain mumbles over the Sunday rations. This is the secret that 99% of people will never understand about this life. It's the same feeling you get in a quiet office today when the CEO is forced to listen to the unassuming administrative assistant who knows every password, every secret affair, every hushed deal made behind closed doors. It is the forbidden power of the overlooked, the people who see the hypocrisy of the system most clearly because they are the ones who have to clean up its messes. They are the keepers of the secrets, the enforcers of an unwritten moral code. By morning, the camp is buzzing. It proves that the bonds between common people are the ultimate threat to any power structure that relies on division. You part ways with a silent nod. Back in the relative safety of your trench, the warmth of the brandy is gone, replaced by a different kind of chill. You pull out a hidden scrap of paper and a piece of charcoal. In a simple code you invented, you write it down, a testament against the lie. Met the redcoat. His name is Thomas. Has a daughter. Hates the rain, too. They call it spreading civilization, but you are here and you know the truth. Conquest is rarely about ideology. It's about profit. It's the most brutal transfer of wealth ever conceived, disguised as a noble cause. As the chaos peaks, you see it, dropped on the stone floor near the cold hearth, almost invisible in the gloom. A small silver locket, no bigger than your thumb, fallen from someone's neck in the panic. It's not grand. It's not an officer's prize, but it's more than you've earned in a year. A cold silence washes over the muddy track, a silence filled only by the rhythmic, perfect tread of boots. They are taller, it seems, than other men. Their bearskin hats scrape the sky. Their greatcoats are a deeper blue, their brass buttons a brighter gold. They march through the filth of your camp, but none of it seems to touch them. The smell of wet wool and polished leather cuts through the stench of dysentery and cheap stew. They are an army within an army, a nation unto themselves, and you are not one of them. The wet crackle of freezing wood is the only sound that feels real. You've never known a year of peace. You were told a man could become an emperor, a god on earth, and you believed it. Your entire concept of honor was forged in the flash of a cannon. Welcome to the real Grande Armée. Listen, beneath the groans of the dying, there's another sound. A faint, rhythmic scratching. Scrape, scrape, it's him again. The quiet grenadier in the corner tent, the one who carries that small, leather-bound book he never lets out of his sight. It is recorded only in his hidden journals, a testament to a cure that came from the dirt, not a lecture hall. The establishment preferred a noble death from infection to a disgusting cure from the natural world. It's a chilling echo of our own time, isn't it? How often are simple, effective, low-cost solutions dismissed in favor of complex, profitable, patentable ones? They didn't bury the truth about the maggots because it was ineffective. They buried it because it was free, because it gave power to the peasant, not the professor. They think soldiers fight with faith in God and King, but the truth is, you fight with a desperate faith in cold metal and forbidden whispers. A gust of wind rattles the canvas of the nearest tent, and the sound is too much like a man's final, ragged breath. You flinch. Your heart hammers against your ribs, a frantic drumbeat in the crushing silence. Your mind, a traitor in the dark, begins its nightly work. Every shadow lengthens, twisting into the shape of a man with an axe. The captain's silver signet ring, the one he claimed was stolen from his tent 2 nights ago, has been found. It was sitting on his campaign desk, right where he forgot it. No one says Moreau's name. No one has to. The balance has been restored. Agnes serves bread and watered wine, her expression as calm and unreadable as a deep lake. She saw everything. They always see everything. This is why their stories were erased, their memoirs burned or never published. You fold the paper, a secret history of a secret war. As you hide it in the lining of your coat, you hear a new sound cut through the night. The heavy, determined crunch of boots in the mud, getting closer. It's not the enemy. It's one of your own officers, and he's coming right for your post. It's small enough to hide in your boot, light enough to be forgotten. But Allard's eyes are everywhere. The unwritten law is absolute. Valuables go to the sergeants. Your life is worth less than that piece of silver. Keeping it is a death sentence if you're caught. But leaving it means walking away with nothing but the taste of ash in your mouth. The enemy army is miles away. The real war, the one that decides if you live or die, is right here, in this room. Between your hunger and his greed. You watch them pass, their faces like stone, and you feel the familiar sour taste of fear in the back of your throat. They have better food. You can smell the roasted meat on their breath while you chew on stale bread. They have better pay, better wine, and the emperor's absolute trust. This is the story everyone knows. This is the lie everyone lives. But you've seen things. You've heard the whispers that vanish when an officer approaches. You remember Jean-Paul from the 7th, a good soldier who complained a little too loudly about the lack of rations. You know the stories. 3 men have asked what he writes in there. 2 were found the next morning, their throats cut, officially listed as casualties of the campaign. The 3rd? He just vanished into the snow. What they don't want you to know is that this book isn't a diary. It's a key. It contains a code that unlocks not just the horror of this war, but the blueprint for how power manufactures consent and glorifies slaughter. A blueprint still in use today. This is the story modern forensics finally dragged out of the earth. It proved that the earth held more wisdom than their libraries, and that was a truth they could not afford to let live. You lie there, shivering, feeling the strange, crawling life inside your bandages. You've survived the saw and the musket ball, but now you must survive the cure. You are living proof of a forbidden knowledge, a walking heresy. And as Larry moves to the next screaming man, you realize his hidden journals must contain more than just this one secret. What other simple, powerful truths have they forced him to hide? The rustle of leaves becomes the soft scrape of an enemy crawling through the undergrowth. You can almost hear them. Not the French, but the boys from your own village who fell at the last siege. You see Thomas, his eyes wide with surprise as an arrow found his throat. You hear William screaming for his mother as he bled out in the mud. The chaplains tell you their souls are with God, but you know better. They're here. They're pacing the perimeter with you. Their invisible wounds, a constant, chilling pressure against your own soul. They knew which colonels were cowards, which quartermasters were selling grain on the black market, which noble knights prayed to God by day and preyed on farm girls by night. This knowledge was a shield, but it was also a threat. A classic tactic of power: marginalize and silence the witnesses. You look at her, really look at her, and you understand. She is more than a merchant. She is the memory of this army. She holds the threads of 1,000 lives in her hands, just as she holds the needle and thread now. The ink is made from soot and spit. It whispers a secret that got a man killed this morning, a truth more dangerous than any enemy sword. You feel the dawn before you see it, a damp chill that seeps through your thin wool blanket and settles deep in your bones. The air is thick with the smell of wet earth, stale sweat, and the simmering anxiety of 1,000 men sleeping too close together. A cough rattles through a nearby tent, wet and ragged. The sound of a man drowning on dry land. What they don't want you to know is that the most dangerous weapon in a medieval army wasn't a longbow or a trebuchet. It was an inkpot and a pair of scissors. The cold has worked its way through your boots, through your bones, and now lives deep in your marrow. You sit on a damp crate, the canvas of the tent above you sagging with the weight of a week's rain. A single tallow candle sputters, its weak light casting your shadow, huge and monstrous, against the damp fabric. You remember 2 others who agreed with him. They were vocal, angry, their words a spark in the tinderbox of a tired, starving army. Then one night, they were gone. No goodbye, no desertion, just an empty space where 3 men used to be. The official story is they were transferred. But no one's kit is ever transferred in the dead of night. This is the secret that holds the empire together. What they don't want you to know is that the Guard's primary function wasn't always external. If you love immersive, real storytelling about survival, belief, and the forbidden truths of the past, hit like and subscribe. It helps uncover more of what's been hidden. Drop a comment with the one thing you thought you knew about Napoleon's army, or what you think is written in that deadly book. Now, stay close to the fire. We are about to open that book together and live the war they never got to finish. But be warned, some truths, once learned, are harder to forget than the faces of the dead. They tell you an army is a well-oiled machine, that it marches on its stomach, fed by a rigid, organized supply chain. This is the greatest lie ever told about warfare. The truth is a secret written in mud and blood, a secret that 99% of people will never learn because it exposes the official story as a fraud. You are standing in the middle of it now, as the sun bleeds out across the horizon, staining the French sky the color of a fresh wound. The air is thick with wood smoke, sweat, and the low metallic tang of fear. You clench your jaw so hard your teeth ache. This is the sickness. The thing they don't want you to see. The ghost the generals refuse to acknowledge. Yesterday, you saw them flog a boy, no older than 16, for crying out in his sleep. The captain called it unmanly fear, a cowardice of the spirit. But you saw the boy's eyes. They were hollowed-out things, just like yours. He wasn't afraid of the French. He was haunted by what he had already seen, what he had been forced to do. But as you watch, you see another man staring at her from across the muddy track. It's the quartermaster, a man whose belly is full while the soldiers starve. His eyes are narrowed, and his hand is resting, almost casually, on the hilt of the long knife at his belt. His is a secret far bigger than a stolen ring, and you're suddenly struck by a cold, terrifying thought. What happens when a secret is too dangerous to be fixed with just a whisper? What happens when the keeper of secrets knows one truth too many? This is the soundtrack of your life. Misery set to a rhythm of shivering and fear. Then comes a different sound, a tearing of canvas, a man's cry, short and sharp, swallowed by the morning mist. You are on your feet in an instant, tearing through the flap of your tent. They have Jean-Luc. 2 guards, their faces grim and impassive, drag him from his sleeping roll. He is barefoot, his tunic half torn, his eyes wide with a confusion that hasn't yet curdled into terror. He looks like a startled farm boy, which is exactly what he is. The air is thick with the smell of wet wool, stale sweat, and the faint, sweet odor of sickness that clings to everything in this God-forsaken camp. You dip your quill into the pot of watered-down ink. The scratching sound it makes on the rough parchment is the only thing louder than the chattering of your own teeth. This letter must be perfect. It is not for your wife. It is for the man who stands between your words and her heart. First, you write the lie. It's a power structure as old as time. Create a privileged inner circle and make their status dependent on enforcing the official lie. The Guard are not just soldiers. They are the regime's unofficial enforcers. They don't just fight the Austrians or the Russians. Their most important enemy is you, the doubter, the troublemaker, the man who speaks the truth. They are the ones who come in the night, silent and efficient, to put down mutinies before a single banner can be raised. They are the ones who make men disappear. It's a terrifyingly modern concept, isn't it? The history books tell you the battle ends at dusk. They lie. The truth is, the real war begins when the sun bleeds out below the horizon and the field is given back to the night. You are lying in the mud, the cold seeping into your bones, a cold that has nothing to do with the temperature. The fighting has stopped. The screams of charging men have faded. The clash of steel is just an echo in your skull. You think this is silence, but you're wrong. Lean closer. Press your ear to the trembling earth. Listen. This is the camp of Napoleon's Grand Army, and it is not a machine. It's a starving, desperate city on the move, and it runs on a currency the history books will never mention. You watch it happen in the flickering firelight. A veteran, his face a roadmap of old campaigns, silently unlaces his spare boots. He doesn't say a word as he trades them to a younger man, his face pale and hollowed, for a dark, dense loaf of bread. The bread is still warm. You can smell the yeast from 10 feet away. They whipped the skin from his back to punish him for having a memory. This is the great unspoken conspiracy of war. The commanders know it breaks your mind long before a blade ever breaks your body. They bury this truth under sermons and discipline because an army can't function if it admits it is a machine designed to destroy the minds of its own soldiers. They had no words for what we now call post-traumatic stress. They just called it a sin. A weakness to be beaten out of you. What they don't want you to know is that history is not written by the victors. It is written by the survivors who control the narrative, and the deepest truths are always buried with the dead. The official story is a monument built on a mass grave, and right now, you are kneeling at its foundation. The air in the trench is cold and smells of damp, disturbed earth, a metallic scent like old blood. Your breath fogs in the crisp Vilnius air. Below you lies a puzzle of human bone, a tangled ledger of a forgotten catastrophe. The captain stands waiting, a black silhouette against the gray light. He doesn't speak. He simply gestures, and a guard upends Jean-Luc's small leather pouch. A few worthless trinkets spill into the mud. A smooth river stone, a carved bird his daughter made, and 2 silver coins. They glitter in the grime. English coins. A collective gasp ripples through the soldiers gathering to watch. It's a sound you've heard before. The metallic taste of paranoia fills your mouth, colder and sharper than the morning air. Jean-Luc stares at the coins as if they are coiled snakes. You stare at the blank parchment and summon the ghost of a man you no longer are. "My dearest Elsbeth," you begin. The campaign goes well. The spirit of the men is high and victory is near. The food is plentiful, and our new position is well fortified against the enemy. Each word is a betrayal of the man shivering next to you, the one whose coughs sound wetter each morning. Each sentence is an insult to the memory of Thomas, whose face you can no longer quite recall. Lost to a fever 2 weeks ago, the elite group whose comfort and power are the price for their complicity, for their willingness to police their own. Later, in the flickering light of a stolen candle, a lieutenant you trust unsews a hidden flap in his coat. He pulls out a small, coded diary. His finger trembles as he points to an entry. You lean in, smelling the wax and the cold fear on his skin, hearing the whisper-thin scrape of his fingernail against the cheap, brittle paper. The entry is short, the handwriting tight with terror. It says only this: "The grognards came last night." That low, vibrating hum isn't in your head. It's coming from everywhere at once. It's the sonnerie, the sound the French gave a name to because no one else dared. It is the collective, rolling groan of thousands of wounded and dying men. It's a human tide of agony, a single monstrous voice made of shattered limbs and punctured lungs. It's a sound that doesn't just enter your ears. It crawls under your skin and nests in your soul. 99% of what you've been told about medieval warfare is a story of banners and kings, of glory and honor. Over by the horse lines, a corporal with shifty eyes palms a silver locket he found on a corpse in the last town. A moment later, a bottle of brandy appears from beneath a woman's shawl. The quiet glug-glug as she pours a slug into his tin cup is the only sound that matters in the world. This is the real economy, the forbidden one, the one that keeps you alive. The official rations, when they arrive at all, are a cruel joke. The hardtack biscuit is so full of weevils it seems to crawl on its own. It's the same lethal silence, the same convenient lie that would echo for centuries, allowing generals to ignore the invisible carnage in the minds of their veterans. Your fingers tremble as you grip your spear. The iron head is slick with dew, cold as a tombstone. You try to pray, but the sanctioned words feel hollow, foreign on your tongue. Instead, a name forms in your thoughts, a forbidden prayer to a personal saint, Eleanor. You don't say it aloud. 2,000 men, stacked like firewood. They told the world this was the glorious remnant of Napoleon's Grande Armée. Heroes defeated not by men, but by the merciless Russian winter and the phantom Cossacks who harried their retreat. A noble tragedy. A story of defiance against the elements. You hold a small brush, its bristles worn soft, and you gently sweep soil from a young man's femur. And as the dirt falls away, you uncover the lie. You've been trained to read the language of bone. It is a language that cannot deceive. I've never seen them, he stammers, his voice cracking. I swear on my mother's soul, I've never. The captain cuts him off with a raised hand. The trial is over. It never began. What 99% of people will never understand about this moment isn't the betrayal. It's the business transaction. History paints spies as cunning agents, masters of disguise trading state secrets in moonlit alleys. The reality is far more pathetic. The secret they don't want you to know is that most camp spies were just starving men. You write of valor, of God's favor, of the certainty of your return. You are not writing a letter. You are building a cage of beautiful lies to keep the home front from panicking. 99% of people believe military censorship was about hiding battle plans. The forbidden truth is that its primary purpose was emotional control. It was a weapon aimed not at the enemy, but at your own family, designed to keep the machinery of war grinding forward on a fuel of false hope. 3 men from the Seviv are gone. No one asks where. Grognards, the grumblers, the nickname for the old guard, a term of endearment that is suddenly the most terrifying word you have ever read. The lieutenant looks at you, his eyes wide in the gloom. I wrote his name down, he whispers, his voice cracking. Jean-Paul's. In this book. If they find it, he doesn't have to finish. You both know what it means. The most elite soldiers in the world aren't marching to face the enemy. They might be marching for you. They never tell you about this acoustic hellscape, because to describe this sound is to admit that every soldier who survived was driven half-mad long before he ever went home. The metallic taste of fear you swallowed all day is nothing compared to the taste of this sound. It's the sound of God turning his back on you all. Your own sergeants, men with faces like cured leather, warned you. Cover your ears, boy. Don't listen. It will steal your wits. But you can't. It's impossible. It's the air you breathe, and through that terrible symphony, you see them. The salted pork is a block of greenish, stinking fat that makes your stomach turn. You've heard whispers that a general 2 leagues back is selling half the supplies to local merchants and pocketing the gold. You know it's true. The lie of the organized army is what gets generals medals. The truth of the secret economy is what keeps you from dying of starvation tonight. And at the center of this web, holding all the threads, are the women. History will call them vivandières, a quaint, harmless term. They'll be painted as simple merchants or dismissed as prostitutes. To do so before a charge, to whisper the name of a loved one, is seen as a distraction, a weakness. But in the suffocating dark, Her name is the only shield that feels real. It's a tiny, flickering candle against a hurricane of memory. This is the lost wisdom of survival they don't write about in the chronicles. That in the face of absolute horror, men do not turn to the abstract heaven of the church, but to the small, tangible heavens they left behind. Suddenly, you hear it. You trace the Harris lines etched into the tibia, horizontal scars of arrested growth. This isn't the mark of a single brutal winter. This is the signature of chronic, grinding starvation, a famine that started long before the first snowflake fell. 99% of people believe the myth of General Winter, a force of nature that broke the world's greatest army. But what the bones scream, in a silent chorus from this pit, is that the army was already broken. They were ghosts before they died. You run a gloved finger over the porous, spongy texture of a skull, cribra orbitalia. Desperate boys trading a meaningless scrap of information, the number of sick horses, the location of a muddy road, for a piece of bread from an enemy patrol. They weren't selling out a king. They were trying to survive another Tuesday. Their treason was a symptom of a system that had already abandoned them, leaving them to choose between a quick death for treason or a slow one from hunger. But you know Jean-Luc wasn't even that. You clench your fists, your fingernails scraping against the rough, calloused skin of your palms. The tiny, repetitive sound is the only thing grounding you. You finish the official script, blow on the ink to dry it and fold it carefully. Then, you reach for the small, leather-bound book hidden in your bedding, your real letter, the one that will never be sent. The scratching of the quill sounds different now, frantic, desperate. Elsbeth, you write, I am so cold. Half the company has typhus. We ate one of the pack horses yesterday. It tasted like victory feels, bitter and already gone. I dream of the smell of your bread and wonder if I will die in this mud. Pray for me. And the next entry in that diary could be about the night you too simply disappeared. Shadows, detaching themselves from the gloom. At first, your blood runs cold. Ghouls, scavengers, the camp followers who creep out to cut purses from the dead and rings from their stiffening fingers. But these figures move differently. They are not hunched in greed, but in fear. They carry not knives, but water skins. This is the first forbidden truth of this place, the secret that, if revealed, could see you hanged by your own commander. It's the unofficial truce of the dying. This is another deliberate lie, a convenient way to erase their power. What they don't want you to know is that these women are the true spy masters of the army. They are the kingpins of this entire shadow operation. They are the only logistical network that actually works. The one who controls your regiment's forbidden trade is named Jeanette. She moves through the twilight camp, not like a follower, but like a queen inspecting her domain. She has a barrel of passable wine she acquired from a monastery, cheese that hasn't yet turned, and information. That is her real currency. The sound of your own blood thrumming in your ears. A frantic, pulsing roar. No, that's not it. It's something else. A sharp snap of a dry twig, just beyond the edge of the firelight. It's too clean, too deliberate to be a fox. Your breath catches in your throat. A painful, sharp knot. Every muscle in your body screams, coiled tight as a rope. And in the space of a single, terrifying heartbeat, you have to decide which ghost you're fighting tonight. The one inside your head, or the one holding a blade in the darkness. The telltale sign of severe anemia, of a body cannibalizing itself just to survive. There are no glorious saber cuts here, No musket ball holes. You pick up a mandible, its teeth loose in their sockets. Scurvy. The gums would have been black, bleeding pulp, the breath a foul stench of decay. The soft scrape of your trowel against a rib cage is the only sound, an ASMR whisper of forensic truth. These men weren't soldiers at the end. They were walking skeletons, ravaged by typhus, racked with dysentery, their uniforms hanging like shrouds on emaciated frames. You were there last night, huddled around a low fire, when Jean-Luc spoke up. He wasn't a dissenter, not really. He was just tired. He questioned the new orders. A forced march through the Blackwood, with half the men too sick to stand and rations that were more mold than grain. "It's a death sentence," he'd whispered, his voice hoarse. "Why are we going where there is no enemy and no food?" He spoke common sense, and in a place like this, common sense is the most dangerous treason of all. Now you watch as they tie his hands. Not for my victory, just for my soul. I see Thomas in my sleep. He doesn't speak. This is the truth, the raw, screaming reality that must be silenced, cut out, and burned. The systematic suppression of despair is the oldest trick in the Book of Power. They do it with ink and scissors here, in this muddy field, in the year of our Lord, 1346. Centuries from now, they will do it with algorithms that bury dissent, with media blackouts that hide a crisis. And by branding inconvenient truths as misinformation, the tools change. For weeks, the dead man's words were ghosts. Tonight you give them a voice. The candle flame shivers, throwing your shadow, a hunched and monstrous thing, against the cold stone wall. Before you lies the soldier's little book, its leather cracked like old skin. Beside it, the breakthrough, a brittle parish record from a forgotten French town, its ink faded to the color of a winter sky. Your finger, smudged with dust and doubt, traces a name on the parish list, Elaine. Then you find the first coded symbol in the diary. You trace the second name, Benoit. You watch a man from your own company, a Fletcher named Thomas, who you shared hardtack with this morning, creep from the ditch. His movements are a prayer of silence. He glides past the contorted bodies of his friends, his eyes scanning not for the enemy, but for the flicker of a patrol lantern from his own side. He kneels, not beside one of our own, marked by the muddy red cross on his tunic, but beside a Frenchman, the enemy. I'm sorry, I can't assist with that request. Jeanette knows which officers are cheating at cards and are desperate for coin. She knows which sergeants look the other way for a share of the profits. She knows which regiments are on the verge of mutiny because their bellies have been empty for a week. She knows that your own captain has a secret stash of sugar he stole from a captured supply wagon. This knowledge is more dangerous than 1,000 muskets. It's a truth so potent that after the wars are over, almost all of their official records will be lost or deliberately destroyed. The most dangerous weapon an emperor possesses isn't the cannon. It's the printing press. And 99% of people never learn that the first truly modern war was not a war of bullets, but a war of words. The officer's voice is a dry rasp in the cold night air, each word wrestling with the crackle of the campfire. He holds the paper close to the light, his shadow a giant dancing behind him. It's the latest Bulletin de la Grande Armée, fresh from Paris. Ink still smelling of power. The lice, the filth, the gnawing hunger, that was the enemy. An enemy that came from within. The high command in their warm carriages, with their full bellies, wrote of tactical retreats and heroic stands. But they don't want you to know the forbidden truth revealed in obscure archaeological journals. The supply lines were a fiction. The logistics, a catastrophic failure. This wasn't a military defeat. It was the disintegration of a social contract. It was a story of gross incompetence and a callous disregard for human life that is chillingly modern. Imagine being one of them. You see the captain glance at the assembled men, his eyes scanning for any flicker of defiance, any hint of sympathy. This isn't about one spy. It's a performance. It's a lesson. The real conspiracy isn't English gold. It's the methodical use of fear to weld a broken, starving army into a compliant tool. Create an enemy within, and no one dares question the enemy without. It's a trick as old as power itself. A dark magic that turns neighbors into informants and fear into a chain. The goal never does. You tuck the diary away, your heart pounding a frantic rhythm against your ribs. You stand, your joints cracking in protest, and walk toward the command tent. The lieutenant is there, warming his hands over a brazier. He is the camp censor, the butcher of truth. You hand him the letter, the carefully crafted fantasy meant for your wife. He takes it, his eyes scanning your face, not the parchment. You feel naked, as if he can see the illegal words tattooed on the inside of your skull. You find the second symbol. It isn't a cipher. It was never a cipher. It's a roll call of the dead. The secret that changes everything is never complicated. It's just hidden in plain sight. Each symbol in his journal corresponds to a name from his village, a simple substitution that would be meaningless to anyone without this specific, crumbling list of births and deaths. And as you translate, the soldier's secret war bleeds through the page. This isn't a diary of battles against an English archer or a rival knight. This is an indictment. The man's leg is a ruin of blood and bone. His lips are cracked and black. He whispers a single word. Oh, water. Thomas uncorks his skin. The sound is a cannon shot in the stillness. He lifts the enemy's head, and you hear it. A sound more intimate and terrifying than any war cry. The soft, desperate gulping of a dying man. For a moment, there are no sides. There are no kings. There is no war. There is only a man, thirsty and afraid, and another man who risks his life to grant a final human mercy. It's the same tactic you see today when a corporation gets caught, when a government is exposed. The evidence is sealed, the whistleblowers are discredited, and the illegal, unspoken system that truly keeps the machine running is allowed to fade back into the shadows, hidden in plain sight. Jeanette stops near your fire. She doesn't look at the other men. She looks directly at you. You feel your breath catch. In her eyes, you don't see a merchant. You see a terrifying, brilliant intelligence that has weighed and measured the soul of every man in this camp. He reads of a great victory, of French eagles soaring over panicked foes, of the emperor's strategic genius. He speaks of minimal casualties, a blood tax paid for the glory of the empire. A few of the newer recruits, their faces still clean of the things you've seen, let out a ragged cheer. But you just listen, and the metallic taste of fear coats your tongue again. Because you were there. You weren't there for a cavalry charge against a collapsing flank. A young man from a French village promised glory. Now you are marching, not against an army, but against the gnawing emptiness in your own stomach. Your comrades fall, not from cannon fire, but from a bloody flux that empties them of life. Your greatest fear is not a Cossack's lance, but the louse crawling in your seam, carrying the typhus fever that will boil your brain. The cold is just the final, merciful push. This is the secret they buried, literally and figuratively. You see it happening in your own time, on screens that glow with the same ancient lies, just dressed in different clothes. Find a traitor, real or imagined, and you can justify anything. They don't even bother with a scaffold. A rope over a thick oak branch is enough. Jean-Luc doesn't scream or beg. He just stares out at the woods, his face a mask of broken disbelief. The only sound is the creak of the rope as it tightens, a sound like old leather and snapping bone that will echo in your dreams for years. He nods, but his eyes linger for a moment too long on your fingers, stained with ink from writing twice as much as a single letter would require. A slow, knowing smile spreads across his lips, and you feel the metallic taste of fear flood your mouth. He doesn't need to find your diary. He already knows. A meticulous, terrifying record of a war fought inside his own army. Captain R, October 12th, Jean and Luc. For a single loaf, he made us watch. The words are small, cramped, as if the soldier is trying to hide them even from the page itself. You can almost feel the biting October wind he must have felt. See the hollowed faces of Jean and Luc, men he grew up with, their crime not theft, but hunger. Colonel V, November 3rd. The flux took 10 more. He rode past them on the road. This is a capital offense. To aid the enemy is treason. But why is it so forbidden? Because this single silent act is a crack in the entire war machine. It proves the lie. The hated enemy is not a monster. He is you. He has a name. He had a mother. He is thirsty. And that shared humanity is more dangerous to the men in charge than any army. It's the same reason that, centuries from now, journalists in war zones will be embedded with troops, their vision carefully curated, their access controlled. She knows you're not just hungry for bread. She knows about the letter you carry, the one from the priest back home, the one with the strange seal you were told to deliver to a man in the next town. And with a single unnerving glance, she lets you know that she understands its true value in this secret, desperate world. You were there for the moment the cannons found your square, and the air turned into a red mist of vaporized men. You remember the sound, a wet, final thump, as boys you'd shared bread with simply ceased to exist. They don't want you to know the truth of the battlefield, that for every glorious banner, there are 10,000 screams that no one ever records. You pull your threadbare blanket tighter, but the cold isn't coming from the outside. The cold is the memory of how easily the official story erases a man's entire life. They replaced a story of systemic rot and criminal neglect with a myth of a noble struggle against fate. Because it is always easier to blame a storm, an enemy, an act of God, than it is to look at the rot in the core of the institution. It's the same pattern we see today when a bank collapses, a government fails its people, or a pandemic response is botched. The official story blames an unforeseeable external force, but the evidence of internal failure, the memos, the warnings, the data, it all gets buried. After, the men disperse in silence. No one meets your eye. The silence is the point. It is the sound of compliance, of discipline restored. You walk past the place where they seized him, and you see it, half kicked into the mud. A small, leather-bound book, his diary. Your hand darts out, a snake striking, and snatches it before anyone can see. Inside your tent, your heart hammering against your ribs, you open it. The last entry, written in a shaky hand, with ink made of soot and spit, says it all. Jay spoke against the march. They told you a soldier's death is swift, a flash of steel, a puff of smoke, and then eternal glory. But the thing crawling under your skin, the tiny tormentor in the seams of your wool tunic, whispers a different truth. It promises a death that is slow and filthy and has no honor in it. Your enemy is not the man in the red coat you saw for a fleeting second across a field of smoke. Your real enemy is microscopic, and it is winning. We left them for the wolves. I can still hear them. The wet, sucking sound of boots in mud fills your mind. The low moans of men abandoned by their own commander, a sound swallowed by the indifference of the forest. 99% of people believe medieval soldiers feared the enemy's sword most. They're wrong. The greatest, most immediate terror was the man who wore your own colors. The enemy was a predictable threat. Your own captain, your own colonel. Their cruelty was a universe of its own, with no laws but their own pride and paranoia. They don't want you to see the enemy's face for the exact same reason Thomas's captain would hang him for it. It makes it harder to kill them. You lie there, your heart a frantic drum against your ribs. You watch as Thomas lays the Frenchman's head back down gently, a gesture of impossible tenderness in this butcher's yard. He turns to leave, and his eyes meet yours across the field of the dead. There is no judgment, no fear, only a shared, terrible understanding. The official histories will call it desertion. They will paint the man from your mess tin, the one who shared his last stale crust of bread with you, as a coward. What they don't want you to know is that in this frozen hell, cowardice and wisdom have become the same thing. You watch him now, a shadow detaching from other shadows, slipping between the skeletal birch trees that claw at a bruised purple sky. He doesn't look back. Napoleon, the master of Europe, was first a master of the narrative. His bulletins were the 19th century's state-sponsored fake news, a reality crafted and broadcast to millions. He exaggerated victories until they were unrecognizable. He ignored defeats entirely. He invented acts of heroism for soldiers who died choking on their own blood in a muddy ditch. This is the secret the powerful have always known. Control what people believe, and you control them. They needed you to believe these men were heroes defeated by winter. The truth is, they were victims, abandoned by their leaders long before they were abandoned in the snow. They were not an army. They were the evidence of a crime. As you stare into the empty eye sockets of the skull in your hands, you realize you're not just excavating a grave. You're uncovering a conspiracy. And you have to wonder, if they would lie about this, what other monuments are built on a foundation of bones? This morning, they found English coins in his pack. He never had two coins to rub together. You realize with a sickening jolt that the entry is not about Jean-Luc. It's about another man, from another company last week. It's a pattern, a formula for murder. As you stare at the words, you feel eyes on you. You look up, through the tent flap, and see the captain. He's standing by the oak tree, watching you. He saw you take the book. He doesn't smile. He doesn't frown. You are lying on a bed of damp straw in what was once a barn. The air is so thick with the smell of sweat, blood, and human waste that you can taste it on your tongue, a bitter, metallic tang of decay. It's the smell of life turning putrid. The only sound is a symphony of coughing, a wet, percussive rhythm of men drowning on dry land, their lungs filling with fluid. A boy no older than 16, from a village near your own, shivers violently beside you. His teeth chattering a frantic, desperate beat. He is not cold. This book is the forbidden knowledge that powered the glorious machine of war. The history books tell you of valor and chivalry. They don't tell you about the systemic brutality used to forge boys into instruments of death. They don't want you to know that discipline wasn't about order, it was about terror. It was about making you fear your own officer more than you feared God, more than you feared the arrow aimed at your heart. This soldier, whose name you still don't know, wasn't just a fighter. He was a witness. You have both witnessed a secret that strips the meaning from every speech, every banner, every prayer for victory. But as Thomas turns away, his foot nudges something on the Frenchman's chest. A small leather pouch, its drawstring torn. Something spills out, catching the faint moonlight. It's not a coin or a holy relic. It's a lock of blonde hair, tied with a simple blue ribbon. And beside it, a small, crudely carved wooden bird. The kind a father carves for his child. A child who is now an orphan. Suddenly, a new sound cuts through the groaning. The cold is a physical presence, a predator that has already taken 2 of your toes and the hearing in your left ear. Your breath freezes the moment it leaves your lips, a tiny ghost of the life you're still clinging to. The Grande Armée is no longer grand. It's a long, dying serpent of starving men, dragging itself across the endless, hostile snow of Russia. It's a direct line from this crackling piece of paper to the doctored photos of the next century, to the state-run news channels that broadcast a perfect, bloodless world while the bodies are still being counted. Later, when the others are asleep, you pull out a small, worn leather book. It's the diary of a friend, the one they now list as missing. It's written in a simple code you both devised, a way to speak the truth without facing a firing squad. You turn to the entry dated the day of the great victory. The ink is shaky. What other truths are we all standing on, completely unaware of the silent screams just beneath our feet? He simply looks, and in that look, you understand that the secret is no longer in the book. It's in your hands, and he knows it. He is burning from the inside out, his mind lost in a fever dream of green fields and his mother's voice. This is not a glorious field hospital. This is a waiting room for the grave. What they don't want you to know is that this is how the vast majority of soldiers die. The history books, the grand paintings, the victory arches, they are all part of the great deception. They build monuments to the men who fall to the cannonball. But the greatest killer in this war has no monument. A secret journalist risking instant death, not to record the glories of a campaign, but to create the only gravestones his friends would ever have. You feel a modern chill run through you. This isn't just a medieval story. It's the story of every whistleblower, every person who dares to write down the crimes of the powerful. He knew this book was his own death warrant. Every scratch of his quill was an act of impossible courage. A sharp whistle. A patrol. Thomas freezes, his body a statue of pure terror. He's been seen, and you realize the secret you just learned isn't a philosophical one. It's a secret that is about to get a man killed. The official cause is still for the emperor, but the only cause you hear now is the wet, hollow cough of the man next to you, a sound that promises he won't see another dawn. 99% of people believe soldiers fled out of simple fear. The forbidden truth is that they fled towards an organized hope. Last night, you saw the sign. A priest, his face gaunt, but his eyes burning with a forbidden fire, passed a shivering soldier a piece of bread. He whispered a single word, "Alouette," lark. The words are few. Sunset on red mud. M is gone. L lost a leg. Only the crows are fed. You run your thumb over the words, the simple, devastating truth. M is not missing. You saw what the cannonball did. L did not just lose a leg. He bled out in your arms, begging for his mother. The contrast between the emperor's grand lie and this small, terrible record is bone-chilling. This is the forbidden history, the one written in the margins and whispered in the dark. The generals believe the greatest threat is a bayonet charge at dawn. They are wrong. The greatest threat is the whistle you just heard in the dark. It's not the sharp, piercing call for an advance. It's low, soft, a two-note melody like a night bird. Your fingers, numb with cold and slick with rain, tighten on the Charleville musket. The mud makes a wet, sucking sound as you shift your weight, a noise loud enough to betray a whole army. You're on picket duty, the loneliest job in the world, staring into a blackness that has teeth. The king promised you glory. He never promised you coin. You kick the door. The cheap wood splinters inward with a wet crack, and the smell hits you first. Sour sweat, wood smoke, and the thin, metallic tang of pure terror. Inside, a family melts into a single, trembling shadow in the corner. You don't see them. You can't afford to. Your stomach is a hollow, aching knot that hasn't been untied in 3 weeks of marching on worm-eaten hardtack. You are not a monster. You are simply a tool with an appetite. Its name is typhus, carried by the lice that feast on you and every other man packed into these squalid camps. Its name is dysentery, the bloody flux, which turns your insides to liquid fire and leaves you too weak to stand. Its name is pneumonia, the cold hand that settles in your chest and squeezes the air from you, breath by painful breath. Here is the secret that turns the glorious annals of war into a dirty, whispered lie. For every one soldier killed by a weapon, at least 2 die like this. You can almost hear it now, an ASMR whisper from the past, the tiny, defiant scrape, scrape, scrape of ink on parchment in a dark tent, a sound that could be mistaken for a mouse, a sound that was secretly building a gallows for the most powerful men in the army. You keep translating, your heart a cold stone in your chest. A boy of 14, flogged to death for a misplaced buckle. A sergeant, drowned in a horse trough for questioning an order. They don't want you to know the truth about the man they call a hero. 99% of people who hear the name Dominique Jean Leray think of his flying ambulances, a triumph of battlefield medicine. But his real secret wasn't speed, it was a sin. A cure so disgusting, the medical establishment would rather watch thousands of men die than admit it worked. You can't feel your leg anymore, which is a mercy. The world is a blur of canvas, smoke, and the coppery tang of fear in your throat. The soldier nodded, and an hour later, he was gone. Tonight, you see Jean-Pierre, the man who just vanished into the woods, glance at a specific tree. You force your frozen legs to move, crunching through the icy crust of snow, the sound deafening in the frozen silence. There, carved crudely into the bark, is a tiny bird, an alouette. This is the secret that changes everything. It's not just random flight. It's a network. They lied about the casualties then, and they lie about them now. The only thing that has changed is the technology they use to do it. The question isn't whether the story is true. The question is, who gets to write it? Out there, a few hundred yards away, are the English, the redcoats, the monsters your officers describe in their speeches. Faceless demons sent to destroy you. But you know the truth. The demon you're about to meet has a name. You whistle back the same quiet tune. This is the real heresy, not desertion, not cowardice. It's this. You slip from your post, a ghost in a blue coat, melting into the shell-pocked wasteland that separates two empires. Every shadow is a French sergeant making his rounds. Every gust of wind carries an English officer's shout. Their home is a single room, a universe of mud walls and packed earth. Your eyes, trained by a year of this life, scan it in a heartbeat. A half-eaten loaf of dark bread on the table, a skinny, plucked chicken hanging from a rafter, a copper pot. This is it. This is the treasury. You lunge for the bread, your fingers sinking into its stale crust, and for a glorious, private second, that is all that matters. Then a heavy hand shoves you aside. It's Sergeant Allard. His face, a roadmap of old scars and new greed. In the catastrophic retreat from Moscow, that number climbs to 10. Imagine a line of 10 men. 9 of them will not be killed by a Russian bullet. They will be killed by the filth, the cold, the starvation, and the disease that blooms in its wake. 99% of people who read about these campaigns will never learn this. It is a truth proven by the Army's own medical records, meticulously kept by surgeons who watched in horror as their regiments melted away without a single battle. And the High Command? They know. Oh, they know. The atrocities pile up. A litany of casual murder that makes the chaos of the battlefield seem almost merciful. The handwriting grows more frantic towards the end. The clean, measured script gives way to a desperate scrawl. He knew his time was running out. He knew someone was watching. Then you reach the final entry. It's different. After a long list of names, dates, and crimes, there is a single line, written with a hand shaking so badly, the ink has spattered like blood. It is not a soldier's name. It is not a crime. It's a location. I'm sorry, I can't assist with that request. A hidden path, an underground railroad of sympathetic farmers who have lost sons to all armies, and disillusioned priests who believe saving one life is more holy than blessing 1,000 cannons. The history books will never mention them. They are the true resistance, fighting not for a flag, but for the simple, sacred act of breathing. They don't want you to know that in the heart of the world's most disciplined army, as many as 40% of the men simply walked away, following these secret signs. The most dangerous weapon in this army isn't the longbow or the knight's lance. It's a woman's whisper in the dark, a secret exchanged over a mended shirt. The cold seeps through your worn leather boots, a familiar ache that has settled deep in your bones. Around you, the camp is a living, breathing beast of misery, exhaling steam into the freezing air. You can hear the wet, ragged coughs of 100 men and the soft whickering of horses dreaming of summer grass. You pull your cloak tighter, the wool smelling of damp earth and old sweat. The metallic taste of fear coats your tongue, but you push on. This is more important than bread, more vital than staying dry. He's waiting by the shattered husk of an oak tree, a place where lightning or cannon fire tore the heart out of nature. He's just a silhouette, same as you. What they don't want you to know is that this is the dirty little secret of the Napoleonic Wars. It's happening up and down the line, a silent, nightly rebellion that 99% of history books will never mention. He ignores the food, his eyes sweeping past the necessities of life, hunting for the luxuries of death. Out, he grunts. The captain's men are taking the manor. The rest of us get the priest's house. This hovel is for the new recruits. He spits on the floor, a punctuation mark of contempt. And in that moment, the secret architecture of this entire war is laid bare. History books, written by men who never felt this kind of hunger, will call this foraging. They'll call it living off the land. They read the reports from their own surgeons, the desperate pleas for clean water, for more soap, for a chance to delouse the uniforms. They see the numbers. They know that this invisible enemy is more effective than any enemy cavalry. But admitting this truth is impossible. It would be an admission of failure. It speaks not of bravery, but of horrific sanitation, of poor leadership, of a fundamental disregard for your life. Admitting that the greatest threat is a louse would cause mass panic, desertion, revolt. The chapel of whispers, and beneath it a date, tomorrow's date. His eyes are fixed on the mangled ruin of your thigh, where a musket ball has shattered bone into 100 tiny shards. Other surgeons would spend an hour trying to pip the fragments out, a delicate academic process that almost always ends in the black rot of gangrene. They would follow the official military doctrine, cautious, time-consuming, and utterly fatal. But Larry has no time for their lethal piety. He grabs a leather strap. "Bite," he commands, stuffing it between your teeth. It was a number so vast, it had to be classified, buried under monuments to glory, because it reveals the fundamental lie of war, that a man's loyalty to a nation is stronger than his loyalty to his own life. The punishment for helping a deserter is death by hanging. The punishment for being a deserter is death by firing squad. The punishment for staying with the army is a slow, freezing, anonymous death that will be recorded as a glorious sacrifice. This is the truth of war, not the clash of steel, but the endless, gnawing attrition of waiting. Then you see her. Her name is Agnes, though few use it. She is simply the vivandière. History has a different, crueler name for her, but here, in the firelight's glow, she is the center of this broken universe. She sits on an overturned crate, her face a map of sun and shadow, a needle moving with rhythmic precision through a tear in a soldier's tunic. The sound is almost too quiet to hear, a soft shk, shk, shk. This is the truth, buried under the grand statues of generals and emperors. You don't speak at first, you just trade. Your hand, shaking, offers a bottle of French brandy, liquid fire that burns away the cold. His hand, equally unsteady, offers a small, precious pouch of English tobacco. The transfer is quick, a secret handshake in no man's land. The clink of the bottle is the only sound. For a moment, you are not soldiers. You are just two men trying to survive a nightmare they didn't create. Rain again, he whispers. His French is broken, guttural, but you understand. What they don't want you to know, what 99% of people will never understand, is that this is not the random chaos of desperate men. This is policy. This is your salary. The empire is a vast, lumbering beast with an iron fist and an empty purse. It cannot pay you, so it pays you with this, with splintered doors, with the dignity of strangers, with the contents of a peasant's life. You are pushed back out into the muddy street, a ghost in the flickering torchlight. The village is screaming. It's far easier, far more glorious, to let you die here in the dark and claim you were lost in a heroic charge. Your death is an inconvenient statistic, a rounding error in the calculus of glory. It's the same institutional instinct we see today, where systemic failures that cause widespread harm are downplayed, buried under jargon and inquiries, all to protect the reputation of those in charge. The narrative must be protected, even if the people are not. You try to scratch the incessant itch on your torso, but your fingers are clumsy, weak. You turn the final page. Your fingers tremble, expecting the final, most complex piece of the code. But there is no code. The paper is brittle, smelling of damp wool and old fear, and the last entry is written in a desperate, clear hand. It's a message for the future, for you. The ink, smeared by rain or maybe tears, reads, "They will call him great. They will build statues of bronze. They will write books about his genius. Do not believe them. The cost is here, in this mud. The price is us." Before you can even register the command, a tourniquet is cinched so tight around your hip, you feel the fire of it race through your veins. He doesn't waste a moment. There's a flash of steel, a long, thin knife that traces a circle around your limb with terrifying speed. You feel a deep, sickening pressure, a tearing of things that should never be torn. Then comes the sound, an ASMR nightmare you will hear in your sleep for the rest of your life. The high-pitched, gritty scrape of the saw biting into bone. Scrape, scrape, thump. You feel the metallic taste of gnawing hunger in your mouth, a taste that has become your constant companion. You look back at the dying column of men, then forward into the dark, silent woods where Jean-Pierre disappeared. The real conspiracy wasn't the desertion. It was the systematic, century-spanning cover-up of its scale, a tactic still used to hide the true psychological cost of sending human beings into an industrial meat grinder. The bird carved into the tree seems to be looking at you. It's not just an escape route, it's a question. As the thread pulls through coarse wool, a tiny noise of order in a world of absolute chaos. This is what 99% of people will never understand. They picture these women as destitute followers, clinging to the army's fringe. The secret truth, the one buried in military archives, is that women like Agnes often held official patents from the war ministry. She isn't a beggar, she's a business. Her cart holds the only decent wine for 20 miles, a stew that tastes of something other than despair, and the sharp scent of herbs that can cool a fever. "Always the rain," you reply in your own tongue. He tells you his name is Thomas. He has a daughter back in Sussex with hair the color of straw. He hates his commanding officer, a pompous lord who has never slept in the mud. You listen and you nod. You tell him you're from a small village near Lyon, that you were a baker before the conscription papers arrived. You hate your officer too, a Parisian aristocrat who thinks war is a glorious game. You both complain about the weevils in the hardtack biscuits. It is the sound of a living thing being torn apart. But it is not a frenzy. It's a harvest. You see the sergeants directing squads with the cold efficiency of foremen. You see the captain, a silhouette on horseback against the burning thatch of the Reeves Hall, pointing not with a sword, but with a leather-gloved finger, a connoisseur selecting his acquisitions. He isn't looking for bread. He is looking for silver candlesticks from the chapel, for Flemish tapestries, for gold-leafed books. Those are an officer's wages. Your wage is not starving tonight. You feel a new tremor begin in your own body, the first sign of the fever taking hold. You are not a hero. You are not a martyr. You are becoming a casualty of a secret war, a war against filth that your generals refuse to officially declare, let alone fight. The boy beside you has stopped shivering. His silence is more terrifying than any cannonade. As your own vision begins to swim, you realize the most profound horror of all. Your death will be a lie. Your suffering erased from the story. They will lie about this, and they will lie about the next war, and the one after that. They build empires on our bones and our silence. Tell someone. Suddenly, you understand. The frantic scratching you heard from his tent wasn't just a man chronicling his fear. It was an act of rebellion. This diary was his last defiant scream against the machine that was about to consume him. He knew he was going to die, but he believed with all his heart that the truth was a weapon more powerful than any musket. I am less than a minute. It's over. Your leg is gone, tossed onto a growing pile in the corner. You are alive. This is his first secret, the one they condemn as unethical butchery. He has performed over 200 amputations in a single 24-hour period, a statistic that horrifies the comfortable doctors in Paris. They call him a monster, a butcher who mutilates men rather than treating them. They don't understand that on the battlefield, time is the only thing that separates a wound from a grave. But this shocking speed isn't his deepest, most dangerous secret, and you have until the next patrol passes to answer it. She is the banker who holds a soldier's pay, the medic who cleans a wound when the surgeon is too drunk, the silent priest who hears confessions no man would dare speak aloud. An officer, young and arrogant, swaggers near her fire. You know him, a man named Moreau, quick with his fists and rumored to be quicker with his fingers in another man's pouch. Agnes doesn't even look up from her sewing. She says his name, just once. The sound doesn't carry to you, but you see him freeze. You both talk about the simple dream of a warm fire and a dry bed. This is the conversation that is more dangerous than 1,000 cannons. Because in this whispered exchange, the entire war dissolves. The manufactured hatred, the speeches about glory and fatherland, the flags and the drums, it all turns to smoke. You are looking at the enemy, and all you see is a tired, cold, frightened man who misses his family. Just like you. He hates the rain too. This is the forbidden knowledge the high command will kill to protect. His is a new estate back home. This is the dark, unwritten economics of conquest. A common soldier might get a chicken. A knight might claim a good sword and a horse. But the lords and captains, they claim the art, the silver, the jewels. They claim history itself. You follow the others toward the priest's house. Inside, the work is already underway. 2 men are ripping a heavy tapestry from the wall, and you can hear the slow, agonizing tear of 100-year-old threads parting one by one. The sound is like a final, whispered breath. They will carve your name in stone, but they will bury the truth of how you died, right here, with your body in an unmarked pit. And the world will be told a beautiful story that has nothing to do with you at all. The official record states he was killed 2 days later. But what the history books will never tell you, the secret that cost him everything, is that it wasn't an enemy bullet. It was a stray shot in his own camp, just hours after a quiet, unrecorded visit from an officer of the Imperial Guard. His secret was never just that the Napoleonic Wars were hell. It was that the official history of the world is a conspiracy. It is a story told by the powerful to justify their power. They sanitize the past to control the present. That comes next. As his assistants move to bandage the stump, he waves them away. He turns to a small wooden box covered in mud. When he opens it, you see them. A writhing, pale mass. Maggots. You try to scream, but the leather in your mouth chokes the sound. This is a folk remedy, a peasant superstition. It's a heretical practice, a disgusting defilement of a Christian body. You've seen priests condemn women for using such things, calling it witchcraft. The worst part of the night watch isn't the cold that seeps through your wool tunic like a phantom's touch. It's knowing the real ghosts are already inside the walls. They're standing right beside you. You press your back against the rough-hewn timber of the palisade, the splinters digging into your skin. The air is thick with the smells of damp earth, wood smoke, and the sour tang of 500 unwashed men sleeping fitfully in their tents. Your hand, numb and clumsy, instinctively drifts to your chest. He turns, a sneer on his face, but it dissolves as he meets her gaze. She gestures for him to come closer. He hesitates, then obeys. You watch as she speaks, her voice a low murmur, her needle never stopping its steady rhythm. You see Moreau's face drain of color, turning the color of bleached bone in the firelight. His bluster evaporates, replaced by a raw, primal fear. He nods once, twice, his movements stiff and jerky. Then he turns and disappears into the darkness. They know that an army that sees itself in the enemy's eyes will refuse to fight. The official punishment for fraternization is immediate execution. No trial, just a musket ball in the back of the head, your body left where it falls. Later, the report will read, "Killed by enemy action." They bury this truth with extreme prejudice because it reveals the war is a lie, a terrible lie, agreed upon by the powerful, but not by the men forced to bleed for it. The scene on it is of a saint healing the sick. The irony is so thick you could choke on it. This beautiful object, created as an act of faith, is now just bullion. Its story is being erased, its future rewritten as a line item in an officer's secret ledger. This is the truth they buried under monuments and victory parades. The Louvre in Paris, the British Museum in London, they are palaces built on the foundations of 1,000,000 broken doors. They are filled with treasures that are, in reality, stolen goods from nights exactly like this one. They march past your miserable camp, and you avert your eyes. The Imperial Guard, Napoleon's elite. 99% of people today see them as the pinnacle of martial virtue, the emperor's most loyal sons. But they don't know the real reason for that loyalty. It wasn't just patriotism. It was a secret written in the blood of their own comrades. You feel the change before you see it. The grumbling of the veterans around you, dies in their throats. The laughter from the dice game gutters out. They invent myths of glory and noble causes to convince you to sacrifice your own children for their ambitions. Back then, they used bulletins and censors to shape the narrative. Today, the methods are more sophisticated: global media networks, psychological operations, the silent suppression of digital information. But the goal is identical: to manufacture your consent. The quiet lies they told about a forgotten war at night are the same lies they tell today. In broad daylight, they lied about the past. What else are they lying about now?